Welcome to What is Going On for new thought from the edge of Ohm. Each week on Ohm Times' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Ohm. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. As the phenomenon of collective alternate memories known as the Mandela Effect continues to grow, many questions are naturally arising, like, are people really jumping timelines, accessing parallel realities and universes, bilocating, meeting their future selves, and even recovering from death? And if so, what's driving this phenomenon? Is someone messing with the matrix? Or is it evidence of a shift in consciousness, a taste of what's to come in the quantum age? With me today to answer these questions and more is transformational speaker, best-selling author, life coach, Cynthia Larson, who is one of the leading researchers of reality shifts and the Mandela Effect. Cynthia Larson, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Sandie. Such a pleasure to be with you today.
Your latest book, The Mandela Effect and Its Society, Awakening from Me to We, presents solid science and grounding theories, illuminating the profound significance and the true meaning of the Mandela Effect. Before we dive into that, can you just give us a two-line explanation for those who don't know what the Mandela Effect is?
Sure. An example, well, first a description of it. It's collective alternate memories, which would be evidenced by such things as, for example, noticing that Nelson Mandela had died in 1987 or around there, but then he was alive again, and having a group of people collectively remember that very differently than the official history, the official facts. So that would be, in a nutshell, the description of it, the definition of it. Like I said, collective alternate memories. I would not use the word false. You may see that sometimes. Yes. False would be an implication that we know what's going on. We're claiming some of these memories are correct and some facts are correct and others are not. There's something much bigger going on. It's probably the biggest phenomenon in all of human history, and it's happening right now in such a way that we're capable of witnessing it.
And it's growing and growing and growing. And you've been tracking it for many years, haven't you? And
That's
now
right.
It's got its own international conference, and it's also being covered in mainstream media.
Yes, this is gaining traction, not losing ground at all. And that's clearly a sign of the predominance of the importance and the significance of the topic itself. So it is coming into such lofty circuits of conversation as MIT author and speaker Rizwan Virk. He's writing about it in connection with the simulation theory at our conference that was held in Nashville, Tennessee in November 2024. We had a PhD student who's graduated. He's now a doctor, and he talked about his thesis in the work having to do with the Mandela Effect. So we have totally turned a page on going from pure conjecture where this could be laughed at and could be considered a joke or new age woo-woo to a point where it's being taken very seriously, being considered scientifically. And this will continue to build from here.
What an exciting thesis to work on. That would be so much fun.
I know.
So there are many, many theories for what might be causing the Mandela Effect. Let's take a look at a few of them. I mean, simulation theory or a dream. What have you got to say about that?
Yes, well, now the simulation theory is really the buzzword of the day. I think so many people have popularized that, including Elon Musk and others. So, but it's a very old theory, actually. And that's why I like the way you've included dream there, because the simulation is something similar to a dream. Let's start with the simulation, though, because we have computers. We tend to think in terms of programming, and that if there is someone behind a game that we love to play, like a simulation game, we can imagine that we're operating as a character in the game, or maybe multiple characters. And that's an idea that we understand now because we have the technology to play the games where people are, experiencing. That you're the person the consciousness behind the character. You don't confuse yourself with the character. If your character dies, you know you're not dead. And so the simulation theory is operating in this kind of a realm where all of the physical world that we think is quite fixed and steady and can't possibly change. Instead, when you look at the simulation idea, you would think that if you are playing the role of a character in that game, it would look real to you. And there are little characters that are called non-player characters that don't even seem to know that they're in a game at all. And that seems to even meshed with the fact that some people notice the Mandela effect, where, for example, Nelson Mandela used to be dead and now he's alive, or product names are changing, physical organs are changing, geography is changing. So many things are different. Versus, so if you're in that game, the simulation, and you're noticing some people really don't have a clue, it fits the whole model of reality. Now, the thing about the simulation, the reason I prefer actually to look at it as a dream, which is the older viewpoint, would be that with a simulation, you're looking for a programmer or who's creating the dream, who's creating the game, rather. With a dream, it's who's the dreamer. These are very similar, analogous concepts. And the dreamer phenomenon and the idea really first, I think it was stated in the East from people that were looking at meditation and recognizing that if you are the dreamer, that all of this so-called reality could be pure illusion, Maya, the stuff of pure fabrication. Now we've got physics indicating that space-time itself may not be the ultimate reality, probably is not. Max Planck did not think that space-time was the ultimate reality. Max Planck credited consciousness. So to wrap this all up, the dream idea would be saying consciousness is fundamental. And similarly, with the simulation theory, consciousness, again, is fundamental. Now, as to who's the ultimate dreamer, who is the ultimate game designer, that would be the ultimate consciousness, the absolute. But then there are levels of that we are capable of exploring.
So some say that it's CERN scientists running amok. Do you think there's any connection there?
There's a connection in the sense that pretty much anything that we look at in the realm of, what could be causing this, sure, there could be a possibility that that's playing a role. And certainly what's happening with CERN and the Large Hadron Collider, which is just one of many of hundreds, if not thousands of these super colliders, they're working with high energy physics and speeding up little tiny particles and crashing them together at phenomenal velocities in order to see what's inside, break things apart to see what's smaller, smash them up and crash them up and see what is the tiniest building block of reality. But as they're doing that, they are operating with such huge amounts of energy that, of course, it might have something to do with what we're witnessing. It might have an effect on perhaps increasing the Mandela effect. Personally, I haven't noticed that too much. When I look at when the Large Hadron Collider is switched on or switched off, I see that we're getting a steady influx of Mandela effects and reality shifts regardless. So to me, it doesn't look like that would be the fundamental primary causal agent, but it could be playing a role of some sort. That's possible.
Some people say that it has to do with the Schumann resonance. And as you point out in the book, that some people have measured various things at the same time. So when you get more than one thing happening, there's a correlation there. What do you think about that one?
That's a good point. So the Schumann resonance is that increase in frequency that's been steadily rising over time. People have been watching that, and it has to do with frequencies inside the Earth's atmospheres, the stratosphere. So you can think of it as like little frequency waves bouncing up and down, and they get excited, and there's just a lot going on. Every time there's a lightning strike on the planet, then that does have something to do with increasing the Schumann resonance. And like you said, there's a correlation that we have noticed within the community of the Mandela Effect experiencers, that sometimes when that Schumann resonance gets very, very high, it's like a whiteout, it's just going bonkers, then we'll see a huge influx of reality shifts and Mandela effects coming in, being reported, being noticed and observed. And so there is a correlation. However, one might not be causing the other. They might be coincident with each other.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, we've got people like Carl Kalleman talking about the ninth wave of consciousness. And, I don't know that that's something that we can possibly measure, but we've certainly, I've been tracking Carl's work, as I know you have, for some years. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And, we do know that people are waking up en masse. And is it because of, solar flares and CMEs? And is it because there's some other invisible wave of consciousness lifting us up? I don't know. But, it seems there's a lot of things happening at once.
There certainly are. And that Mayan consideration, Carl Kalleman is excellent at really outlining the science and the theory behind the Mayan calendar. And some people would say, like, well, we should have seen something happen in 2012. That was supposedly the end of the cycle. Carl Kalleman lays out exactly what's going on with this ninth wave and why we have seen things. And I would agree with Carl on that point. I think that right when we would expect this ninth wave to come in, we see the technology of the Mandela effect. Basically, to me, that is the appearance of the technology and the sign, that the signal that showed up right around 2012 for a lot of people. That was concurrent with the phrase, the verbiage, Mandela effect, which I had been tracking already for quite some time, but many people only freshly became aware of it right around that time. So to me, it makes sense. And it looks brilliant. It seems like there's something going on definitely with the ancient wisdom of the indigenous people of the world, which line up. So if you look at the Mayans and you look at the Hopi and you look at others, they are in a lot of agreement. And that right there is astonishing, amazing, and worth taking a look at.
It's interesting. I mean, in the book, you cover many of the theories. There's time travelers, there's converging timelines, reality bubbles, theories that realities converged in 2012. Then there's non-linear orthogonal time shifts, which sounds, really out there to me because I know nothing about that. But, are these drivers or are they effects? We don't know.
Yeah, the ultimate driver, I would say, I'd agree with Max Planck that it's got to be consciousness. I think even Philip K. Dick, I credit him with the orthogonal nonlinear theory that sounds like that is so out there. That is so Philip K. Dick, the author of those amazing science fiction stories. But he was an experiencer like I am of this whole Mandela effect phenomenon. He was witnessing it. He was describing it perfectly to a T in his speech in Metz, France. So I think the driver's got to be consciousness. It's got to be the human evolution of consciousness. That's where to me, the indicators keep pointing. But like you say, we don't know for sure, and we don't have all the specifics yet. It's just an exciting time to be observing, paying attention, sharing notes, comparing ideas and theories and experiences with others who are also noticing this very real phenomenon occurring.
You've had many experiences yourself. I mean, you've been having experiences since childhood, so it's not a case of which came first, the chicken or the egg. You've been open and you've been noticing and recording as well. Many other people's stories as well as your own. Tell us a couple of your own experiences.
Well, I've had some real doozies. I'll start with the simple ones, just the ones everybody has, where I would notice that I would set my keys or my wallet down and I knew exactly where I had put them because I'm very, very clear about such things. I'm very almost boring about doing things like that. It's a way of locking something into place, actually. I think I've been doing it for so long because I know since childhood that if I don't do that, things actually move around. So I would start noticing that, like, okay, I put my keys right here, now they're gone. My daughter put her shoes on the floor in her bedroom, now they're gone. So I was seeing things like that would be appearing and then disappearing, transporting, transforming, and so on. So things like keys and laundry going missing in the wash, you put it in the washing machine, it doesn't come out of the dryer, it vanished somewhere between point A and point B. So those are the simple cases. But then things get much wilder for me. And some of the wild ones, they're not crazy, they did happen. I was driving my car one day and needed to be on time to an appointment. And I was in a state of gratitude, a very high level state of gratitude, really being grateful for everything and just how good can it get sort of thoughts. In the midst of that blissed out reverie, most surprisingly, I experienced a flat tire. I knew which tire on the car. I'm driving the car at a slow speed, and the steering wheel is pulling in the direction of the flat tire. I heard it go sort of a terrible noise, and then it's sort of going flop, 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 the way a tire sounds when it's not properly rolling smoothly. So I pulled the car over to the side of the road. I got out to check the tire, and it was fine, which is extremely confusing. Now I can't just stand there and not do anything, but I don't know what to do because I know it's a flat tire, but it doesn't look flat. So I kick the tire. I've never done that before. I thought, why do people kick tires? Well, in a moment such as this, you need to do something. I need to confirm, does it work? And I still don't know what to do, but I'm going to be late if I just sit there at the side of the road wondering what's happening, processing this doesn't make any sense. It's a flat tire, but it's not flat. So I think, well, it looks fine. I know it's flat, but it looks fine, so I'll drive on it. So I'll drive slowly. If it goes bad, I'll pull over again. But it was fine. So I speed up slowly, get to where I'm going, park, get out of the car, look at the tire, it's fine. Go to the appointment, get back in the car, look at the tire, it's fine. Go home, tell my husband, who used to be a mechanic, dear, could you please take a look at the tires on the car? I don't say anything about what happened, but I just say something seems to be a little amiss. So he goes out, and he's very painstakingly careful, measuring every single tire pressure on each tire. He said, well, it's a good thing you mentioned that because, some of the tires were a bit low. They needed more air. One was perfect, however. And I said, which one? And he said, the tire on the right front of the car. So that was a real-time. I've had real-time reality shifts, Mandela effects like that. And that one was just like getting a flat tire fixed by God when being in a state of how good can it get. I was just in a blissed out state. That one still blows my mind just to think about it. But I've had other things happen. They're just off the hook strange in a good way.
You do talk about, how if we are in a real high vibrational, state of being, blissful, full of the joys of life and love, we can change things. And I was reading that particular story this morning, and I thought, well, I've got something that nobody can explain happening. Maybe I'll use, take your advice, and I will put my attention on it and see whether I can fix this problem. And so I did. And I couldn't fix the problem, unfortunately. So I don't know. Perhaps I need a bit more training here. But I have actually seen things happen,
Yes.
when you do put that attention, and that, you really have to be in a good place to be able to do it.
Absolutely. But I've seen some of my household chores get done like magically, like the floor is cleaned, and my husband will say, thank you for cleaning the kitchen floor. And I'll say, I thought you did it. He said, no. And I've had my laundry do itself. I've just had some, but remember, this is quite doable when you recognize there could be these adjacent possible realities. And I'm constantly asking, how good can it get? I'm constantly doing the best I can to stay in that elevated state of gratitude, very high vibratory frequency state. When you do that, I can guarantee you'll see a lot of surprisingly positive changes. Maybe not exactly the one you were aiming for, but keep practicing. Keep asking, how good can it get? Keep your energy high. Stay grateful. Stay reverent.
Well, I've certainly had experiences of time, driving home, and I know how long it takes. And actually, I get there in much quicker time. And, other things that happen when you're driving. It's been quite strange, but I think probably that's because I'm usually in a different place when I'm driving. I'm sort of semi-tranced, I think.
I think that's an easier place to do these things, actually.
Yeah.
And that is one of the most frequently reported in examples that I've seen over 25 years of receiving firsthand reports. It would be traveling farther in less time than should be humanly possible without speeding. It's like, how did I make a 6-hour drive in 3 hours?
Yeah.
That's what people are noticing, that kind of thing. And I wasn't speeding. I think I remember seeing everything, or do I? They start feeling like, this is so weird. How did that happen?
People talk about the veil is thinning, yes. By which I think they mean, the veil between this dimension and another. Do you think that is what is happening here, and that we're flipping backwards and forwards, and we don't even know it.
Yeah, when you think of the veil, I would think of it as a revelation of levels of conscious agency. And that may sound like a complicated idea, but if it's not, because we have neurons in our brain, neurons in our heart, neurons in our gut, which have been recently discovered. Those are three primary functioning levels of conscious agency within yourself. So some people know that my heart wants this, my head wants something else, my gut has a different feeling. Perfect. I mean, it's not perfect that there's imbalance, but it's perfect that someone's listening. And so this is the thinning of the veils. It's, to me, it's the revelation that we have many, 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 many levels of conscious agency. We have access to the collective subconscious, where humans are growing and struggling at times and learning to not be so brutal to each other, learning to be kinder. And then we've got access to our collective higher consciousness, which is where we're feeling guided to this ninth wave that Carl Kellerman's talking about, and the entering this fifth world, the golden age, Shambhala, that many of the prophecies of the indigenous people talk about, and the Bible too. So as we're moving in that direction, we can start sensing that, oh, this is what it means. The thinning of the veils is the thinning of the deception that actually I am a multitude. I've got my head, my heart, my gut. I'm accessing the collectives at the subconscious and the higher conscious level. And when we recognize that, there's so much good that can come of that. It's really the opening of our eyes. And this tool of the Mandela Effect, it's like playing with a game in the sandbox, like human children learning to play with, what if we collectively can change all of reality together? What if we're doing it right now? I think that's the question the Mandela Effect is asking us.
Well, I can remember a friend of mine, when we used to take long drives, road trips from Phoenix to LA, we would talk about what was going on in our lives and our work. And we might talk about a situation that somebody was in that, we needed really to help them change it. And we started to realize that all we had to do was speak about it and it would change. And this happens several times. So I think we are affecting reality, when we never realize it. Just talking about someone, we're affecting them.
Yes. And it's important to start paying attention to that and acknowledging that, recognizing that the words we use, even the daydreaming that we do, we might notice that we're living in another parallel adjacent reality. People may notice us bilocating, as I described. I think you've read that chapter where I go through amazing experiences. Some of those have to do with daydreaming that I'm doing something, and then coming out of that daydream to find evidence that I did do that in this reality. So maybe sometimes
people witnessed it.
Yeah, they witnessed it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, there's one bit that really fascinated me in the section where you were talking about the nonlinear or orthogonal time shifts. You talked about indigenous peoples and locality and spatial separation is regarded as an illusion by them. And you said that shared awareness in First Nations communities is very common, and that your friend, the American linguist Dan Moonhawk, had a gift for illuminating the importance of the ways that language shapes consciousness. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. Dan Moonhawk Alford is a brilliant man. I say that meaning that the brilliance of his heart shone through. I just loved being in his presence. He was so welcoming, such an exemplary human being. And he was a linguist, and he was also one of the first people to get together at a gathering of linguists, physicists, and indigenous wisdom keepers and elders. And that would be the gathering that happened in Canada with Leroy Little Bear of the Blackfoot Nation, and also David Bohm, the physicist, who is the father of the holographic interpretation. So Dan Moonhawk Alford's contributions are vast. He was a follower of the idea that language itself shapes our consciousness. And this was not his own original theory, but one that he was presenting and exploring with these indigenous and these physicists people. And basically, in a nutshell, the idea is that if you look at the way, for example, a language is based on verbs, then you'd notice that emotions, such as going left to right like this, in a certain indigenous language, could represent both the duck, which moves like this, and the snake, which moves like this. And so the movement is then the message. And then when people recognize, oh, the duck and the snake have something in common, there's a depth of comprehension and awareness of very subtle mechanics that are occurring in reality that we might otherwise miss if we're focused instead on a noun-based kind of a language.
I remember reading many, many years ago a book. It was the kind of book that, we would expect, to be written today by some of these people, like Greg Braden or whatever, who are doing all of this research. And the author in that book said that we were telepathic. And it was only when we started to use language and developing the left hemisphere, that we lost our ability to be telepathic.
There's a lot to be said for that. And in some of these indigenous traditions, that was not lost so severely that they would play games with children, for example, to guess what someone was thinking. It's like playing rock, scissors, paper, but hiding everything behind your back all the time and just practicing it all the time until you can really become aware of the way you're sharing consciousness with others, concealing certain things, because that's important if you're hunting and gathering, if you're working with the natural world, if you're tracking the motions of the moon, as the indigenous people did, to such a degree that many of us don't even know how they were doing that, because we're not thinking that way. We're not going into the subtleties of dynamics that were so obviously important to people before we had this noun-based language regime.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when you watch people who train their dogs, with sign language. And, they seem to be completely in sync with one another, and the communication channels are wide open.
I did have that experience with our family dog, and he was very telepathic, and he would think long range. Like if he knew when I was grocery shopping, he knew when I was asking the butcher for a special bone. As soon as the car parked in the driveway, he was already barking, like, I want my bone. He wouldn't do that otherwise. I'm just saying there's proof. But then if I wanted him to do new tricks, to jump over a fence, a higher and higher fence, I would telepathically show him that this is us effortlessly doing that. We're practicing over this little log. Now we're going a little bit higher. Now we're jumping over a fence. And he was just perfect at it to a spectacular degree. So I did take him to a dog agility course once for the first time, and he could easily, through telepathic awareness and trust with me, do things like go through the collapsed parachute that many dogs will not. For the first time, they don't want to go into something that looks like it's caved in on itself, and it looks like a tent that collapsed. But I would just telepathically show our dog, this is what you do, and he just did it like usual. And the trainers that were there at the course were amazed. And he didn't care for treats either, because he was so focused when he was doing these things, didn't want to eat until he got home again. So I pocketed the treats. I said, you'll get them when you get home.
Wow. Yeah. We're going to take a short break now. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is one of the leading researchers of reality shifts and the phenomenon of collective alternative memories known as the Mandela Effect. And that is transformational speaker and consciousness researcher Cynthia Sue Larson, whose best-selling books include Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and The Mandela Effect and Its Society, Awakening from Me to We. We'll be back with more from Cynthia Sue Larson after this break.
Times TV.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Times flagship radio show, What is Going On? And as an author, editor and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who have walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees and no BS, just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene keys is basically the code book of life. In the gene keys, the book is made up of these 3 levels: shadows, gifts, and siddhis. And the journey is through those 3 levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the siddhi. And the siddhis are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Cynthia Sue Larson. We talked about Philip Dick before the break, and he described his books as being based on fragmentary residual memories, and he remembered 3 parallel alternate lives. He also suggested that plural realities might exist superimposed onto one another. Do you believe in us, another me being in another reality and maybe 10 more or more?
Yeah, it feels like when I was daydreaming that was exactly what was happening, that I was capable of being simultaneously in one reality, where in one case I was at a book event just daydreaming like what a perfect day it was, and it would be great to be walking down one of my favorite streets, and then come to find out that I was actually doing that was witnessed doing that. And if you're thinking, well, that couldn't have been a real reality, I had another separate occasion where this daydreaming thing happened, and I was laying in bed in a cold morning that I didn't want to get up and walk through the house, too cold to get up so soon, but I needed to wake my daughters up. So I was daydreaming that I walked down that cold hall, opened their door, flicked on their bedroom light, opened the curtain that was too heavy for them to lift, said good morning to them, what time to wake up, rise and shine, all that good stuff. But I didn't do any of that. I was still in bed the whole time, just daydreaming it. But then my daughters came. I could hear them waking up on their own, which they never did. Pitter patter of little feet coming to find mom. Where's mom? She's still in bed. Why? She went back to bed. What are you doing back in bed, mom? And I wasn't back in bed. I'd never gotten out. So then I raced to their bedroom to see what the heck is going on. And the too heavy curtain was open. The light was on. Indeed, I was the only other person in the house besides them. Somebody woke them up. So I'm giving an example of what I've witnessed, because to me, it's evidence that we are capable, very capable, of occupying two concurrent realities, going back and forth, if you will. And our consciousness is facile. It's capable enough of doing that. We're at a juncture in our human evolutionary process where we can, through imagination, recognize, what if the world could be peaceful? What if people could be kind? What if people could get along better than they ever have before? And through that kind of imagination of constantly asking questions we want to live the answers to, we can actually experience it. So I would say, yes, these things are quite real. I know Philip K. Dick must have been experiencing them, because some of the things he's experienced, I also experienced, such as meeting his future self. It's a very personal thing to have happen. He had that happen, which shocked him at the time. I had it happen to me, which was very shocking to me at the time. And I'm very indebted to, I think we all are indebted to these pioneers such as Philip K. Dick, who are willing to share these seemingly outlandish experiences at a time when I believe human evolution is now opening this doorway for all of us to start noticing, can you imagine that a daydream could be real? Are we ready to be responsible for ourselves even in our daydreams, and not just think that we can just go do terrible things in those daydreams? Are we ready for this? Those of us who are ready for this, it's my strong opinion, which may sound radical, it probably is, that this radical optimism that I speak of, this how good can it get philosophy, is ready for those of us who are ready for it. And this is a long prophesized juncture where we're going to see a split of two worlds. We'll see people that are ready to live this way. Even if we don't know what we're doing, that's okay. You might feel like, I don't think I have this mastered yet, Cynthia. That's okay. It's it's fine. The water, it's like, come on in, the water's fine. We can do this together. And the old way, we know what that is. It doesn't feel like instantaneous manifestation there. But a lot of us have experienced instantaneous manifestation. And that would be this crossing of the worlds, the awareness that we really are in all these realities. So let's pick the good ones.
Well, what I find fascinating there is, so, a friend saw you. She saw you walking along the street. You were actually somewhere else. So in your friend's reality, she's not in the same reality you are. The you that was in, at the author event is in one reality. The you that is over there walking down the street and she's seeing you. So she's in that, she must be in that reality in order to be able to see you, no?
Well, this is where it's time for us to start recognizing we can be in a superposition of states. That's a physics idea, which is, we've heard of the Schrodinger's cat, which is in a box. And if you don't observe it, then it's paradoxically both alive and dead, due to the fact that it's participating. It's a hypothetical cat, but it's participating in a quantum physics experiment involving a vial of poison gas, which is triggered by a radioactive decay isotope, which it's hooked up to a little hammer that breaks the glass that releases the poison, and so on and so forth. In other words, the quantum particle, we're fine with that being in a superposition of states. But now we've entangled a cat into this very strange device, and now we're saying the cat is in a superposition of states. I'm agreeing with that, and I'm saying that is the way reality works. And as the time that we are the cat, we can recognize that we are capable of being alive and dead. I've been through that myself. The humans are now capable of recognizing we can actually play with different possible realities and select between them. I can be dead in one reality and alive in another, and choose to be alive. And people can witness that from the outside. And this is the kind of thing we're noticing with the Mandela Effect, where not everybody has the same exact memories of the fruit of the loom logo with the cornucopia. Some people say it's always never had that. And some people are certain that's the hill that they're going to go down on. It's like, that for sure was a cornucopia. Comes up every American Thanksgiving, because we often have the cornucopia as a symbol for our American holiday, which is just coming up now this next week. So it's fresh on our minds. But this is the kind of thing where some people don't have to all agree about any of these particular realities, because it's our consciousness that's dancing and weaving and playing amongst all these different imaginal realms.
I mean, it's so exciting that there's so much going on now with quantum physics. I mean, so many things are being looked into and researched and debated, and we truly are entering a quantum age. Tell me about the quantum Zeno effect. I'd never heard of this until I read about it in your book.
Okay, well, there's a Zeno, kind of a paradox that goes back to very ancient times. It was a thought experiment that if you just start walking slower and slower, taking smaller and smaller steps, will you ever get to where you were heading? Will you ever fully arrive? If every step you take is half the size of the last step, it's like you're sort of slowing down. So it's a funny question. But when applied to quantum physics, it has a different sort of idea. And in quantum physics, the quantum Zeno effect is such, it's kind of like the watched pot never boils. So you can keep observing, checking to see, is that teapot boiling yet? No, it's still not boiling. And the more often you check it, the more likely it is to be very ironically locked in a state of never boiling, which sounds hilarious. But if this has happened to you, then you'd swear by it. Yeah, there's something to this. But it's quite real in quantum systems, where the quantum Zeno effect is utilized to lock a quantum system in place, thanks to constant observational, just observing. It's like being an obsessive compulsive person and just checking something. And so you're locking that system into place. It can't move because you're not looking away from it. And if you do look away, then things are wide open to all sorts of shenanigans. Anything can happen. The water can start boiling. The system can be released from that quantum lock. And so that's the idea, that just by observation alone, you have the power to hopefully lock a good situation in place just by observing it. Like, oh, I like this reality. I've just won the lottery. I'm going to lock this in place. Or I like this reality. My car tire is now fixed. I thought it was flat, but it's fixed. I'll lock that in place or whatever. So that observational power that we possess is quite amazing.
What about then, I don't like what's going on over there, all of that war and hatred. I'm going to lock that so it's frozen in place and doesn't get any worse.
Yeah. Well, first you want to release the lock. This is where most people have a little bit of an issue, because it's human nature. We're looking at something and we don't like it, so we're staring at it, and then it's human nature often to complain about it and bring in, like, hey, everybody come look at this, look how bad this is. And this is actually not what you want to be doing when you are consciously steering reality through consciousness itself. It's better to release the realities that you do not wish to experience, which could be as simple as just distract yourself, look at something that you enjoy. Raise your spirits with a good memory, some happy time. Think of something positive. Be grateful for something that happened in the last day or so. Anything like that. And then the next time you look back at whatever it was that's so horrible and horrific, it's possible that it may have improved slightly. So you can actually look for improvements. You can expect that the situation will change. This is a whole new thing. It's not what I was taught in school. Nobody taught me to look at it, look away from a terrible situation, look back and imagine how good can that get? Is it changing? Okay, let's look away again. Let's look back. Is it changing? That's some new thing. And that's this new science that we're entering into, thanks to the Mandela Effect.
And you have a section on information from the future in the past, which is really interesting. And, there's the famous one of the novella that was written about the ship called Titan, that was supposed to be, almost impossible, unsinkable, that did sink, hit an iceberg, and it kind of, preempted what was happening 14 years later with the Titanic. You also mention a Simpson episode, and they seem to do this, not infrequently, where they seem to get something bang on the nail there. During COVID, somebody was, sharing a meme and pictures about a book that was written by, oh God, what's his name? I can't think of his name now, but that actually talked about a pandemic, and Wuhan was mentioned there, and everybody said, "Oh, he's predicted this." I've got a client who, is a Lancet published physician, and she was writing an entry for a competition that the Lancet were doing back in the year 2007, and it was, what do you think about the future of medicine? And she wrote this whole fictional piece about, in the year 2107, we're looking back and here's what happened. And she talked about a pandemic, a national pandemic, international, global pandemic. So, there are people all over who are doing things like this. What do you think is happening there?
Well, that's a huge question, but it seems clear that we have access outside of space-time to possible timelines, if you will, realities, other possible parallel universes. We can sense where the energy is strongest and where things might be most surprising and most interesting. And if we're in a certain state of meditative awareness, we can essentially remote view these, if you will, to see what could be coming. And there are some projects where futurists are employing the assistance of people who are, I think everybody is quite psychic intrinsically. Everybody has this capability. We may not be aware of it, but writers for The Simpsons and other authors definitely are tuning into their imagination. They're able to tune into and access the future at levels where they can see, like, this is where timelines might converge. This is a sort of a nodal point where a lot of people are interested. Like The Simpsons predicted the discovery of the Higgs boson with such remarkable clarity because that was a very huge point, but it's astonishing that they predicted it before it was found. And like you said, your friend, recognizing that there had been this great pandemic, it's like we can see these little bumps along the road, these high points of collective consciousness where there was something being sorted out, an awareness. It was a significant event, not just because of what happened, but because of the effect that it was felt by all these people, the emotional impact. And that leaves kind of a mark, if you will. So it creates an easier access point to view it.
So it's the energy, very, very strong energy, is felt back in time. Or yes. If we're not talking linear, then, however that is felt. I think it was the Bart Simpson one that actually had a reference to Trump being elected as president. Am I correct?
I think they had something like that too. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Those writers obviously are given carte blanche. It's like, okay, go for it. Get really wild and crazy. Think of something amazing and outlandish, and they do. And sometimes the stuff they show doesn't quite happen, but sometimes it does. And to me, it looks like they're exploring those far reaches of imagination. And when it comes to predictions, I know people love predictions. They want to know what's going to happen. And this topic of the Mandela effect is actually showing it's not so much the importance of the prediction, it's the importance of us asking nature the questions and asking questions that we would love to live the answers to. That's where we can reclaim this divinity, this intrinsic divinity and sovereignty of spirit that we uniquely have, without giving everything away to transhumanism or some technological solution that let's not give our power away, is what I'm suggesting. Let's recognize that instead of craving, like, what are the prophecies? What did they predict for us? Let's know that we are capable now of creating everything, steering this entire spaceship Earth ourselves, as the indigenous people have handed it over to us. It seems like you guys are old enough now, take the steering wheel. You know what you're doing. Maybe we don't quite know exactly what we're doing. And sometimes we have a temptation to exact revenge. I hope we've outgrown that. Hopefully we're now attaining higher and higher levels of conscious agency on that David Hawkins scale, where we're more in a state of reverence and gratitude, and just really radiating the kindness and the love and all the higher ethical principles that we most wish to experience in the world. Let's be the change that we wish to be. And to me, that's what the Mandela effect is showing us.
Of all the stories that you've, heard, read about, etc., do you have one favourite that you just think is just wonderful and like to share it whenever you can?
Oh, there's so many good ones. I think the funny ones are sometimes the best because they just seem kind of goofy. So this may not be life-changing, but I was listening and watching an interview with Dr. Dean Radin. He's the chief scientist at Institute of Noetic Sciences. He was talking about what was then his new book, Real Magic. And I was thinking about it, and I'd watch the whole 1 hour show, and I'm thinking about it. And I go and pick up a bottle of furniture polish to clean my dinner table, and it's almost empty, so I'm absent-mindedly shaking it in one hand. Now I should know better, not thinking about it at all. And then I shook it so vigorously that it flew out of my hand. At that point, I just walked into the kitchen and shut the door behind me. Now the bottle is gone. I didn't hear a single sound. There was silence. It flew out of my hand in a direction that should have hit the oven. There should have been a crash sound. There's no sound at all. There's no bottle. It's gone. It's left my hand, and now I'm in a little bit of a fix. It's like, where did the bottle go? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I know better. I should have quantum Zeno affected it. I should never have let go of that bottle. What I know better. Oh no, what have I done? So I look inside the oven, which is impossible, right? It would mean that it would have teleported right through the oven door inside. It wasn't there. Paradoxically, I look inside the refrigerator, which is right there. That was not even the direction of the throw. The door is closed, so it can't go in the hallway. Anyway, long story short, I give up on that bottle and think, well, this is a lesson for me. I'll not do this in the future. So I'm about to go get another bottle of furniture polish, a new one. But then I notice as I walk through the living room, there in a whole different room in front of the TV set is the bottle of furniture polish. So it's just funny. I mean, that is a funny thing, but it's showing me in that daydream state, losing that quantum Zeno, check. If I just let something fly out of my hand, it can go to another soft landing somewhere else. I like the soft landing because I'm looking at us moving from the fourth world to the fifth. I would love a soft landing for all of humanity. So for me, the message is clear. We can have that soft landing. Don't fixate on the problem. Allow ourselves to daydream. How good can it get for us collectively? And then allow for that soft landing to occur, and we can find it.
How good do you think it can get?
Off the hook. Amazing. I love to ask, blow our socks off. Just show us how peace can come, how good can come from every broken, troubled, horrific condition here on the planet. Show us every exit, every good path out. We are listening. We are ready to receive. I know I'm speaking on behalf of humanity, but I think I speak for all of us that if that could happen, would not we be all ready for such a miraculous transformation to occur? I know that we're ready for it. So I think it's time for us to start calling it in. And even if each of us only does one simple thing and just start each day by asking how good can it get, even if it doesn't seem good, let's just do that together. And collectively, I know that we can shift everything in the world.
Well, the piece I like about that is that we can also, you say that the present is capable of influencing the past, that we can then change the past. Yes. So none of this happened.
That's exactly what, yes, I don't have much time to go into all that, but exactly. And so the more people explore this phenomenon, and you see, this is why the phenomenon is called false collective memory, because it's hard for people to wrap their mind around how can it be that this entirely different narrative could be remembered by people. That is because we're in a completely different, if you will, timeline where all of the history is filled in as if it was always in that wonderful way. And that is exactly what can happen for all of us at this, time when reality itself is shifting, geography is changing, continents are in slightly different places. The North and South American continents, to me, it looks like South America just keeps scooching over to the east. They used to be more in a line with each other. I'm just mentioning that one. Kidneys, I remember, they used to be down lower. So if I put my hands to rest my hands after I've climbed up a big hill, I'm putting them to protect my kidneys. They're not there now. They've moved up under the protection of the rib cage, greater safety there. So I'm just pointing out things are changing in a big way for millions of us. It's time to notice it's happening. reclaim our own intrinsic divinity, our ability to affect everything, like you said, with a few words, with an intention, with a focus.
Yes.
And we can see extraordinary, wonderful things happening and unfolding at this time.
Yeah. And I think it was just a few days ago, there were reports that magnetic north have changed, and scientists can't understand why it's changed so quickly, and it's moving more towards Russia. I mean, we don't know what's causing that.
Right. There's so many mysteries, and it's good to be open to that mystery and to play with it, to recognize, what if we do have control over things we thought we had no control over? It's not like I'm not saying that I'm God. Definitely not. If people are listening, like she says she's God. No, I don't. Collectively, we can work together, and we can work with the awareness that we're here to learn. We're here to be kinder, to be better people. If that's what's happening, then what can we make of these mysteries that are revealing themselves to us at this time?
I love your books. Just very quickly, because we're almost out of time. Reality shifts. I mean, you've been collecting these stories for forever. Do you have to keep, putting out new editions of it to update it?
No, that book, I feel like when I write a book, I feel like it stands on its own, and each book is a time marker. So that book came out, it was actually the first book that I wrote, even though it was published after Aura Advantage. Aura Advantage came out officially in 2003, and the proper print version of Reality Shifts came out after that. But technically, it predated that. It was the first love child book of mine that was a response to the awareness that reality changes. It shifts when consciousness does change the physical world. So that's what's happening. And it's just a walkthrough of how to start paying attention to the internal beliefs and patterns of thinking that's going on, often unobserved in ourselves, that we can start working with and transforming ourselves first, and then seeing changes in the world.
Cynthia Sue Larson, we're out of time now. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sandie.
So for more information about Cynthia Sue Larson's books, events, Reality Shifts newsletter, and the Mandela Effect conferences, visit realityshifters.com. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another edition of What is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me. Thank you, Cynthia Sue Larson.
Take care.